I'm back. It's going to do a little, probably can't see it there, but there's a candle on the desk there. It's on my bed and table on the side of the bed there. It's so I have a little fireside chat here. um, a friend of mine in Quebec, oh, by the way, this is part 16 of our series of videos on reclaiming your securities. And a friend of mine in Quebec received a text on her cell phone there about a week ago, not even. Quebec has gone into a curfew, and it was interesting. So I asked her what this notice, what it said, and it was addressed to citizens. And if you're listening on TV and the media and politicians talking, they're always talking about citizens or Canadians or U.S. citizens or Australians and citizens. They never talk about men or women. And that's because that's what they have jurisdiction over. And but more importantly, I think that's constantly being embedded in our minds. You're watching on the TV, getting, in front of the idiot box. It's not the box, it's the idiot at the end of the day. We're talking about programming, right? Like you program your computer, it only knows what you tell it. And unlike men and women, a computer doesn't have a choice, it has to accept it. We have a choice. But anyhow, so we're getting bombarded all the time with this stuff on the TV, especially in particular the politicians, Canadians, U.S. citizens, New Zealanders, and it's kind of being instilled in our psyche that it's become the norm for people to identify themselves. And I did a video on that, the claim to be, and that's what they have jurisdiction over is citizens. So the alert was sent to notify citizens that there's a curfew in effect. The question is to ask yourselves, are you a citizen? And I assure you this, you will not find the term man or woman in any legislation. See, men or women belong to God, and citizens belong to the country, the corporation that you're in, Canada, United States, Australia, England, Germany, whatever. Again, any and all countries/corporations that are registered with the Securities and Exchange Commission in the United States. These are illegal corporate entities. It's business. It's just business. They're all about business. And I want to remind people too that the borrower is servant to the lender, and the lenders are the ones calling the shots here. So although your politicians and your government people are saying do this, do that, they're just puppets. Okay, and behind the scenes, it's the lenders that are calling their shots. It's the cabal, whatever you want to call it, that's calling the shots. But also know this, you see, they've taken the perspective that this cabal thing, or the lenders, that they are the lenders, when in fact it's all based on the presumption we've abandoned our securities, the assumption and presumption of general deposit. So it's they basically stolen our credit, and that's where they're getting their power from, is our credit, our wealth, our property. And that's another reason why it's important for people here, we want to get back to basics here, is to take control of these securities and to do the reclaiming. And I'm going to expand on that a little bit on this reclaiming thing, because people are getting a very limited viewpoint, and I base it on conversations with other people. Just not on just the YouTube stuff. We do Zoom meetings. It's part of our Reclaiming Securities information package. I have a Skype group that we've been talking on there for a number of years. So very limiting. And so I want to expand on that a little bit too, and the possibilities. I have said in these videos that, there's a multitude of remedies, a multitude of possibilities. And, people are asking me, and, asking if I or others have had success with this information. And the answer to that is of course, yes. Otherwise, we'd not be presenting this information to you. But more importantly, my question to them is, after watching these videos, remember, this is limited, it's not full information, but after watching these videos, does the information make sense? Does it resonate with you? Do you think you can make it work for you? That's like what other people do is immaterial. Yeah, he knows how to fish and he can fish. Okay, well, what about you? You got to get the rod, you got to start doing it, right? So it's really a redundant question. I get why people are asking the question. And but anyhow, back in 2004, a friend of mine had stopped filing income taxes. And before I go down this path here, one thing I want to explain about income taxes for people who are not aware: income taxes does not pay anything and have anything to do with infrastructure or funding your medical or anything like that whatsoever. What they tell you, what people believe. I can assure you, and I've read the answers here in Canada from the Parliament of Canada from the 1930s, that the taxes pays the interest to the bondholder, to the lender. And there's many court cases in the United States that's essentially the same thing. Money does not collected in the form of taxes does not go to anything have anything to do whatsoever with infrastructure. That's all funded by our states. However, because we haven't provided the credit, it's an accumulation of debt, and that we've talked about in previous videos that we have to get where we can draw down on that debt. And there's a couple of ways. So I'm going to talk about another way to do that here today. My friend in 2004, so we stopped filing in 2004. In 2008, early in 2008 is when he started to receive threatening letters from the Canada Revenue Agency. And so he drafted up a letter, and this is with our understanding at the time. And our understanding at the time was, after having read those answers I just mentioned, where Mr. Jock talked about the purpose of money to be created, issued, spent, and returned to source for cancellation. I was discussed in that by the members of Parliament, again, with Graham Towers, the first governor of the Bank of Canada. This is after the stock market crash, blah, blah, 1929, and the resurrection of the economy, 1933, where they went from a substance system to non-substance systems, and basically it's in promises to pay now. So anyhow, he was getting these threatening letters, and we didn't know anything about reclaiming securities at the time, but it was based on what Mr. Jacques had said. And again, the key there, so no debt remains, return to source for cancellation. You see, when the money is created, spent, issued and spent, and returned to source for cancellation. It's like yourself, when you issue a promissory note, okay, for whatever amount, once you have that back in your hands, the debt's canceled, right? Nobody else has it. Nobody else has the claim. It's the same thing. So it returns to source for cancellation. And remember, I'm speaking in generalities here, so don't take it literally. But it's how we approach this situation that resulted in, he has not heard a peep from the Canada Revenue Agency since. And I'm aware of 4 other people who took a similar approach. I've shared this communication with other people in our Skype call group, and over the years, and some of those people, were getting harassed by Canada Revenue Agency, and so they basically did the same thing. They did a modified version of it, and they too had the same result. The difference here is that, keeping in mind here that the government has the original foundation security that they have, and there's something we have to do to identify that, we have an interest here in that security. Which, when we do that, then establishes that they're now holding it as trustee. Now, there's 2 ways to look at this trustee thing. In the first part of these videos, there's been a lot of talk about, getting back, your profits and your securities, getting the loans released, the mortgages released, getting your profits and proceeds back into your control. Well, with what my friend Ange did here, he actually did the opposite. He told them, and again, this is after reading the answers from what Mr. Jacques said, the purpose of money, so we're talking like your promise to pay, for example, just for example, is to be created, issued, spent, and returned to source for cancellation. No debt, 0. So with that in mind, that's why Ange wrote up the letter the way he did. And basically, he's in a roundabout way. He brings in the birth certificate, which we would treat that differently now. And again, we had no knowledge of the reclaiming securities at that time in 2008. It was April 24, 2008. It's the date on the letter. And so he basically said in there that any and all business done in this name, referring to the all capital letters name, is done in right of the province of Ontario and or Canada, whichever is applicable. And I should kind of try to qualify this a little bit here. So I'd like to go back to in the Bible there, true or not, but I'd like to use the story. And God created the planet, blah blah, and put man in it. So I like to talk about the Garden of Eden. I like to relate the planet or portion of the planet as being the Garden of Eden. And in the beginning, we all knew we came from the one, and we're all one family. And when we're all one family, we don't have different surnames. God knows us, our Father knows us. We don't have different surnames. We wouldn't have any surnames, quite frankly, if you think about it, because we're all of one family, the God family, right? and in that garden and in that condition of knowing we're all one with the God family, then nobody in that garden is saying, this is mine. There's none of that selfish activity, mine, mine, mine. It's our garden. God gave us dominion over it, not ownership. So he didn't say, hey, go around claiming ownership. That's stuff that belongs to God. Nobody here created it, anything on this planet, truth be known. So, some people say I created this, I created that. So because I created it, I have the rights in it. Okay, fair enough. But God created the planet. So who has the rights in it and all the dust? There's a story where a scientist says to God, we don't need you, God, anymore. And God says, oh, really? The scientist says, yep, we can transplant limbs, we can transplant hearts, we can transplant heads. Heck, we can even grow children out of test tubes. And the God says, would you like to put that to a test? And the scientist says, sure. And the scientist starts reaching for the ground. And God says, what are you doing? And the scientist says, I'm getting some dust. God says, get your own dust. So that's where I come from where I'm coming from here. So we're all of us, whoever it was in the time in the Garden of Eden, we recognize it's God's garden. It's a family garden. It belongs to the family. My brothers, my sisters, we're all here and we share. We all have dominion over it, not each other, not ownership, but we share what's in the garden. Well, then somewhere along the way, somebody said, well, you know what? I don't want to share. I don't want to partake in this anymore. This part of the garden is mine. And these fruit trees, whatever, they're mine. And the fruits, the profits and the proceeds of those trees, the fruits, those are mine too. So don't touch. I qualify this as the birth of selfishness. And I know to be that selfishness is the root of all evil. And if people really think on that, I think they'll come up with the same conclusion. Yes, selfishness, not the love of money, none of that nonsense. Selfishness. At the end of the day, everyone's responsible for our choices, right? So and selfishness goes very deep. I've looked at myself, mark my words. I'm selfish, and for example, giving 99.9% is not giving 100%. So there's still that little bit of selfishness in there, but that's for self-analysis for people to do their own thing on that. So Angela's approach here is getting back to her in the Garden of Eden, and I don't own anything. And the fruits of all of these fruit trees, so we got all these fruit trees going in the garden. We're all doing the role of the God family. There's no selfishness going on here. So we collect all of these fruits, we put them in a big pile, and then everybody takes what they need, to feed the family, so on and so forth, and lumber for building houses, whatever the case may be, however things were back then. I have no memory of that. I was there. And whatever's left over, you feed the poor and use it for other purposes. But like I say, where we're at today is everybody's taking all of this stuff. We're just ripping this garden apart for ourselves. Everybody in the planet wants a piece of this and piece of that. Mine, 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 mine. And then we wonder why we're all in the pickle we're in. And so, Ange took a different approach. And that is, he instructed the Canada Revenue Agency basically to go out there and collect all the debt and take it all and put it in the Consolidated Revenue Fund to return it to there, so there's no debt remaining on his account. And he will continue to provide his labor. So he's a sole contributor. And every one of you is a sole contributor on your all capital letter name account, if I can put it that way. John Paul Smith, whatever identification documents you're running around with, you're the one doing the work, right? You're the only one doing the work in that name. You are the sole contributor, and you're the only one because of that would have a legitimate claim. Again, we got to do that through a proxy, but just put that in perspective a little bit. Yeah, and the other aspect I should add in here too, when Ange did his letter to Canada Revenue Agency, he was offering 100%, not 99.9%. He's instructing them here. Please note that I wanted it evidence that it is my wish and intention that all paid employment, income, and earnings in any bank accounts or transactions in the name John Paul Smith, all capital letters, be surrendered to the Canada Revenue Agency to provide a 100% tax return to the Consolidated Revenue Fund, so that all sources of revenue are accounted for through the social insurance number, and that no debt exists, as I will continue to provide my energy and labor in the name of the account. So he's offered him 100%. And our thinking was, well, if you offer somebody 100% and they don't take it, then can they come back for less than? Think about this now. He offered somebody 100% and they refuse it. They don't take any, or they don't take any. Well, can they come back either they take 100% or they take nothing. So can they come back in the future and take, once you've offered the 100% and they don't take it, can they come back for less than in the future? And well, simple deductive reasoning in court cases will tell you, not that we need to rely on court cases, it's really common sense, but the answer is no. So, and this is where people are also going to have a glitch, because some people are saying, well, if they take it all, then how am I going to put food on the table? But you're forgetting that it's your securities, our promises to pay that can fund our estate. So if our promises to pay can fund the estate, and that's where we get our food and shelter, clothing, so on and so forth from them, what do I need money for? I don't. Remember, the trustee, it's the trustee's job to do this stuff as long as they have the means to do that. So if we provide them with the credit to do that, then they can do that. And so they take care of all of the accounting, pay all of the bills. On paper, I have nothing, zero on paper, nothing. And I'm no benefit, no ownership, no money, no claims, other than, we got to state our claim here to get this control. But as far as the profits and the proceeds go, it's basically what Ann just talked about here in his letter. As far as the profits and the proceeds can go, take it all. Take it all. And they never came and took any. That's not the point. But so it was after he did that we, and especially after having the getting on board with the reclaiming securities, took a second look at that. And I actually read this letter to my mentors, word for word, complete. And I'm not going to share the entire document here because people are just going to copy it, and copying other people's information is not an expression of understanding, as I've stated. And you see, people have to, it's a good idea to be able to think on the fly here. It's one thing to submit paperwork into a situation, and but it's another thing to be able to stand if you're asked questions or queried about that, even if it's with friends. It's called knowledge and understanding. And it's like if you talk to an auto mechanic, he can tell you about the car, right? He's got the knowledge. He went to school, and then he's got hands-on experience. So anyhow, yeah. So if they don't take the 100, when you make the offer of the 100%, they don't take it, they cannot come back for less than. So we have to, basically, it comes down to a situation of this: is yes, we can claim for all the profits and the proceeds, blah blah blah, that comes back to us, or we could say, nope, you guys can have it. You have it. Get it to the Treasury. Get it to the Consolidated Revenue Fund. And because my mind's saying, I don't need it. I don't need it. Why? I don't need it. And so that gets that monkey off my back. And see, this is like going back to, again, that's why I use the metaphor analogy of the Garden of Eden. Let's look at it this way. If everybody did that, like in the Garden of Eden, if everybody took the apples off the trees, picked apples and put them in a big pot, and we could all just take what we need from that pot as we need it, where's the lack and limitation? Where's the 1%ers and the 90, the 1% and the 99%? Where's that? It's non-existent. It can't exist. So when we reclaim our securities, in particular the foundational security, now we're establishing we've got control of the security, that the primary security, the underwriter, the security, the surety, and the ultimate security, and that's in trust, and they hold that in trust as trustee. Again, they didn't give any value in exchange. So that's a trust situation, and the trustees on that. So at that point, now they have the liability, and for the debts of the estate, the trust. And but again, we have to provide them with the credit to do that, and so we can provide them the credit to do that. So then they can settle all of the accounts. Trustee can now do his job, and so you get a car for your estate, you can pay for that, and you get use of the car. It's all in the name of the estate, right? Not your name, the name of the estate. So, like I say, on paper, you're getting nothing. Where the thing comes in, where it looks like you're getting something, is when you want to actually get something. It's like, okay, I know I want the profits and the proceeds to come back to me, which is your absolute right. I'm just offering another perspective that other people may want to say, well, I really don't need that either. I'll see we could maybe get back to peace and love here or something. I'm not sure, but so in other words, one is saying, no, I want the profits and proceeds to come to me, and again, legally and morally, that's your absolute right. No problem. Other people may say, no, I don't need any of that. So I'm just going to let it all go. I'm source here. I'm the sole contributor. I am the source. Source is source. Where does source go but source for source's needs? It's a bit of a mind bender here, but I'm definitely speaking in generalities, just trying to give plant a few seeds here, and some things will go cha-ching with some people. It's got to come from within, not from out there without. So anyhow, in this condition, so they're the trustees. They've got the ultimate security being the estate. It's your estate. You've secure control, or you have control. Quite frankly, they're not. There's a registration for every man, woman, and child, right? So they got their own too. So they know what's going on here. With these registration of births, there's this registration of birth that resulted after your birth, or when you were born, and you've been a sole contributor ever since, or since your 18th birthday when you started working and doing business, so on and so forth, in that name, through that name, and so. You got the trustee set up, you got them providing the credit so they can look after the obligations of the estate. And as far as the profits and proceeds, so now you can identify to them these other securities that have been assumed or presumed to be abandoned, and instruct them to, now, I'm releasing my claim to this, to the Treasury. So now you guys go and get it from them, these tax evaders over here, go get it from them and put it into the Treasury. Or the trustees, they really can't say no to it. It's one heck of a gift of love, if you ask me. It's pretty, it's actually, maybe if you think about this, it'll feel very freeing. I don't know. It does for me, very freeing. And again, they got the trustees have the credit so they can settle the obligations of the estate. What do you really need money for? Sure, pocket change for this and that and the other thing. That's one thing, but I'm talking about, major expenses and stuff like that. We really don't. So rather than take the approach of learning how to reclaim the securities to the extent that I get the profits, I got to make all these claims with these banks and get the tax man involved to go and go after these people to collect from them on the profits and proceeds from my securities that they failed to report the disposition of, and so on and so forth, as I've talked in previous videos. Rather than getting the paperwork in place so that they can do that for me and collect from these institutions and then get the check back to me, I don't need the check. So that makes it a lot simpler now. It's just to inform them, you guys are the trustees, here's the credit to manage the estate, take care of all of that. I'm in control, it's my estate, you got in trust. Grantor, I'm the one that's granting the title to this brand new car in here, for example, the new vehicle information statement, or MCO. I'm just using the car as an example. Whatever other property, anything and everything you do in that name is automatically in the trust. You really can't take anything out of the trust, just like in the Garden of Eden. You're in the Garden of Eden. Yeah, you can claim the stuff as mine, but it doesn't change the reality of it. None of it is. Mental thing, right? That's why intent, it's always intent. Intent is important. So when somebody's saying, I want the check, and make the check payable to my estate, get mine, give me all the money, collect it from all these guys and make sure you get it all back to me. That's like I say, that to me, that's the opposite in a way of selfishness. I'm not saying it's wrong. Don't get me wrong. Not at all. I'm just, for some people here, they would rather just take I don't even know what words to put to it. And so again, I'm just offering a little bit different perspective here, another way to look at this situation to come to the same, it basically nets in the same result, except all the profits and proceeds goes to the Treasury because I don't need it. the IRS / Canada Revenue instruct them on, this bank thinks I abandon that security, and that lender thinks I abandon this security, and they over there think I abandon that security. So here's the information for the Mr. CRA and Mr. IRS. So you go and get the money, you go get those profits and proceeds from them now. Have the bank provide you full accounting. Rather than get it and collect it and give it to me, you keep it there. I think you'll find that you'll get results a lot faster that way. It's like a friend of mine told me years ago, and this is before marijuana was legal in Canada here, and he told me of a fellow he knew that would have 3 grow-ups. One for the thieves, one for the police, and one for himself. That's pretty smart when you really think about it. Because the alternative to that is, well, I'm going to grow it all for me, and those are most often the guys that get caught, right? So you see how greed and selfishness can play a big hand in this, and it's kind of like a karma thing, I guess. But we reap what we sow. So yes, everyone has the full right to claim the profits and proceeds, so on forth, to get back all the way back to the 18th birthday. You can get all that back, absolutely. Or you can just identify what all that is and instruct them to go get it, but put it in the treasury. And they'll be a lot more willing to do that for the treasury than to do it for you, I guess is what I'm saying here. And is it possible that that's how it was meant to be in the first place? I read the I Am teachings, and it talks about in there, if the nation falls, I don't care what nation we're talking about here, we all fall. It's like a sinking ship. We're all on a ship. If the ship sinks, we all go down. But if the ship is good and healthy, then we're all safe and secure, right? So we kind of look at it that way. And that's what the teachings are saying, nation first. So how do you support the nation? Put something in the treasury that the nation can use to maintain the ship, rather than going to third-party lenders. You following me here? We're the ones we're waiting for here, people. If we were doing that, and that's why I firmly believe, and a lot of friends of mine do as well, and quite frankly, we've been on this, like I said, with Ange's letter here that he sent in 2008. We don't need the money. We're here to serve. We're sources like you're the light. The light shines and it just goes out. The light has no expectation of something coming back. It doesn't work that way. Selfishness does. Love, true unconditional, true love doesn't. And so yeah, you'll find a lot less resistance in that mentality, and it's so that's the path many of us, what I was going to say here is that we were trying to fit that into the system for a long time, and it wasn't until we found out that the registration of birth is a security that all of that made sense now, and how we can do that. Up until then, it was not effective, but we didn't know about that foundational security. We didn't know about the mom being the grantor. We didn't know any of that. And so absent that, like I said, without that, you've got nothing and to stand on. And, something of yours that's in their system, but we're not, of course. And so anyhow, it's just another way of approaching the reclaiming securities. If I put it this way, viewpoint or perspective. It doesn't have to be to the point of, it can be, like I say, it's perfectly, everyone's within the right to do that, to get back everything that was, all the profits, the proceeds, so on and so forth, whatever that amounts to. Like Peter in the blog there, $21 million just on one note alone. Or he could have said, you know what, yeah, you collect it, but you keep it for the treasury. You guys are paying the bills anyhow. I don't need it. You're the trustees of my estate. You've got all the credit you need for that. To set off the charges there. So as far as these other profits and proceeds, just 21 bucks, yeah, throw it in the treasury. And I bet if more and more did that, then the governments wouldn't have to go to external lenders, or conversely, where the government's forced to go to foreign lenders because we weren't doing that, because we all wanted mine. I want the house, I want the car, I want the furniture, and I want the money. It's mine. You should all watch the movie Revolver if you want to see ego in action. And I was going through some so-called spiritual awakening at the time when I saw that movie, and I saw the faces in that movie and going, yep, that's me. That's the ugliness of the human selfishness. God knows nothing of it. So, that's another way of looking at this whole reclaim your securities thing. And we've talked about this during our Zoom meetings, which, as I say, is part of our information package, or reclaim your securities information package. But see, so I've given you kind of two here. Now you got two ways but it's two ways I've laid out for you, but that's not the only two ways. There's numerous possibilities here, and it depends. And it also, like I say, depends where people want to go with it. Some people just want to have the security in place. So if they get a fine for whatever, no problem. Stick a copy of the fine to the lien filing and send it back to the government. I don't care if it's $1,500 fine, an $1,800 fine, or $1 million fine. I could care less, whatever it is. And once they know that, well, then that'll stop, because it's just paperwork for them for nothing. So, yep, you take there's lots of fining going on these days, if you know what I'm talking about here. I'm just avoiding certain language so we don't get booted off. But so you take that fine. Yeah, I'm happy to accept it. Yeah, give me that fine there, and staple it to your lien filing if you have that. You don't necessarily need. You can even just staple it to the long form with some additional language on that, and send it back to the trustees. You're the trustees. Take care of it. It's not like you got something for the money here. You just got a fine for nothing, right? So there's really nothing even to set off there. It just disappears, and I can attest to that for a fact. Been there, done that. The large accumulation of unpaid traffic fines for a very long time. So anyhow, that just gives you an additional perspective on a way to look at this whole reclaiming securities thing, and but not limited to. And so, when people are asking me, did I get all the back to me? No. Now you know why. I don't need it. I don't believe it was ever meant to be that way. I believe it was meant to be that everything, all the property, all of our property, all divine inheritance is in that trust, in a world trust of some kind. It's in trust in your country. They got the registration of birth documents. There it is. All the business you do in that name is going to be, the property is going to still be in that trust. Nothing's ever going to leave the trust. In your mind, you're thinking it's mine, but it still belongs to the trust. It's only because you're thinking it's yours that you got to bear the liabilities, because the fact of the matter is it's not. So a lot of assumptions and presumptions have been born out of this, which is what the Reclaiming Your Securities is doing, is rebutting these assumptions and presumptions. But maybe we want to look in our hearts. Let's say in just a second here, maybe it's the selfishness that got us in this pickle in the first place. I get the trust, all the properties in the trust. The trustees have the job to do, but we took the money, so now they had no means. And we went to the bank to borrow the money instead of saying, here's the note, just to the treasury, and pay for the car, and any profits, proceeds would come from wherever you need something. Here, I'm happy to give it for the country, not for death and destruction, for the treasury. So many of us firmly believe that to be the case. And it's like the deputy registrar told us, a birth certificate is not and was never intended to be personal identification. It evolved. And what evolved it? Us. It wasn't such a piece of paper. Back in them days, it was a piece of paper, the birth certificate. A lot of them are plastic now. The birth certificate just didn't wake up one day and start and magically be your personal identification. We did that. We walked in and said, yep, that's me, and signed on the dotted line, testifying, yep, that's me. I certify that's me. I'm the person named above. We did it. So yes, we evolved something that was never meant to be ID into ID. But that also kind of, if you step back, and you could say it's done in ignorance, but was it really done in ignorance? Maybe it was our selfish, egotistical self speaking there. He said, well, if that's me, then that's my car. If that's me, then that's my house. But is this stuff really ours at the end of the day? And what can you take with you? Nothing. So, we hear say that God, or whatever created the universe and the planet, and owns the dust, and owns everything manufactured, created out of this dust. In other words, I own nothing. Remember, it's not about ownership, it's about control. And it's funny how the banking cartel thrives on that. Then they know something we don't know, or are they doing something the way God would have it, or that's more truthful than the way we're looking at it. But anyhow, so we use this birth certificate as personal identification, as I showed you in video of number 1, introduction to trust, estates, and securities. And there it is. And that's when we started drawing the burdens to ourselves. Simple as that. So deductive reasoning says to me, well, if I reverse that, then all of that shifts from me over to where it should have been in the first place. In other words, it never had to come to me. If none of us ever used that birth certificate as personal identification, would you have these liabilities on your back today? No, it wouldn't be possible. Of course, we would have to know what to do with it. And I get that that didn't happen, but nonetheless, we're here today. Fast forward to today, and looking around the planet, there's a lot of selfishness going on. Everyone's self-interest, this, self-interest, that. And you know what? Maybe it's time just to lay it all down and let it all go. Just let it all go. Let it all go. They've already got ownership of everything in the trust, in your nation, in your country, corporation, whatever you want to call it. It's already there. They already signed up. They already agreed to be the trustees. So maybe we should just help them out rather than me. Food for thought. That's all it is. You all got a brain. I know you know how to use it, and do your own thinking. And anyhow, I thank you for putting up with me. God bless, and I bid you adieu. Till next time.